The day I discovered my parents had emptied my college fund was the same day I made my first million. They never knew that while they were transferring my future to my brother's hands, I was building an empire from my bedroom. Their betrayal taught me the most valuable lesson. Sometimes the people meant to believe in you become the reason you learn to believe in yourself. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The letter from Westfield University arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, the prestigious emblem gleaming in the corner of the envelope like a beacon of promise. I'd been waiting for this moment since I was 12 years old, when my calculus teacher first told me I had exceptional analytical abilities and should consider a future in finance. The acceptance packet felt heavier than paper should, weighted with possibility. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it, scanning past the congratulatory introduction to find the words I most needed to see. Full scholarship. But they weren't there. Instead, the financial aid section detailed a partial academic scholarship, covering only 30% of the $68,000 annual tuition. The remaining balance would need to come from family contribution or student loans. I wasn't worried, not yet. My parents had started my college fund the day I was born. For 18 years, they had reminded me of this fact whenever I achieved academic success. "We're so proud of you, Emma. This is exactly why we've been saving for your education since day one." The fund had been mentioned so often it had become almost mythical in my mind, the golden ticket that would transform my intellectual potential into professional reality. I tucked the acceptance letter into my backpack and headed downstairs, finding my parents at the kitchen table with my younger brother, Tyler. Spreadsheets and financial statements covered the surface between them. Their conversation halted abruptly when I entered. "It came," I announced, pulling out the acceptance letter. Westfield said yes. My mother's smile seemed strained. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said, but her voice lacked the enthusiasm I'd expected for this milestone moment. "I got a partial scholarship, but I'll need to access the college fund for the rest," I continued, confused by their subdued reaction. "I should probably talk to the bank about transfer procedures for the fall semester." The silence that followed stretched so long I could hear the refrigerator humming in the background. My father cleared his throat, his fingers nervously straightening the already aligned papers before him. "Emma, we need to discuss something," he began, using the same careful tone he'd employed when explaining our dog's death years earlier. "There have been some changes to our financial situation." My mother jumped in, words tumbling out with practiced precision. "Your brother has been accepted to Grayson Academy's specialized program for his learning differences. It's the best program in the country for students with his processing challenges." I glanced at Tyler, who stared down at his hands. At 15, he had struggled with dyslexia and ADHD throughout his school years, his academic journey a sharp contrast to my straight-A trajectory. "That's great," I said, genuinely happy for him. "But what does that have to do with my college fund?" My father's posture stiffened. "Grayson Academy costs $86,000 per year. Insurance covers nothing, as it's considered educational rather than medical. And the specialized program requires a 3-year commitment paid in advance." The implications started to take shape in my mind, but I pushed against them, unwilling to accept where this conversation was heading. "We've had to make some difficult decisions," my mother continued, her voice taking on the reasonable tone she used when mediating family disagreements. "Tyler needs this program. Without specialized intervention now, his future opportunities will be severely limited." "You used my college fund." The words emerged as a statement, not a question. The truth crystallized with cold clarity. "We had to reallocate resources based on need," my father confirmed, slipping into the corporate jargon he used at his management job. "Your brother requires specialized education to have any chance at college. You've already proven you can succeed in any environment. We know you'll understand, my mother added. You've always been our responsible one, our achiever. With your grades, you can get student loans and scholarships. Tyler doesn't have those options. I stood frozen, processing this revelation. 18 years of promised support, of celebrated achievements, of assured futures, evaporated in a single conversation. The entire fund? I asked, my voice unnaturally calm. Everything? My father nodded, relief crossing his face at my measured response. We've already transferred the full amount to secure Tyler's place. Classes start next month. I see. 2 words that contained an universe of hurt, betrayal, and sudden recalibration of reality. We're really proud of your acceptance to Westfield, my mother offered, as if pride could substitute for financial support. And we're sure you'll figure this out. You always do. There it was, the familiar refrain that had defined my childhood. Emma will figure it out. Emma doesn't need help. Emma always lands on her feet. Statements once delivered as compliments now revealed as convenient justifications for withdrawal of support. Tyler finally spoke, his voice small. I'm sorry, Em. I told them not to. I looked at my brother, the genuine remorse in his eyes softening the edge of my shock. This wasn't his fault. He hadn't asked to be born with learning differences. Hadn't requested to be the family's designated struggler while I was cast as the natural success. It's okay, Ty, I assured him, meaning it. You deserve the right education. What remained unspoken, so did I. My mother reached for my hand across the table. Sweetheart, I know this feels unfair right now, but sometimes in families, resources flow toward the greatest need. You're so capable, so independent. You've been practically self-sufficient since you were 14. Her words unlocked something unexpected within me. Not just hurt or betrayal, but a strange sense of calm realization. She was right about one thing. I had been self-sufficient for years, though not in the way they imagined. What my parents didn't know, what they had never bothered to discover, was exactly how I'd spent the past 4 years while they were focused on Tyler's educational struggles and my father's corporate ascent. They saw my academic achievements and assumed that was the full extent of my activities. They noticed my independence and interpreted it as personality rather than necessity. They had no idea about Minder Market, the online tutoring platform I'd built from scratch when I was 15. What had started as a simple website matching honors students with middle schoolers needing homework help had evolved into a comprehensive educational support system serving 12 school districts across 3 states. The initial investment of $400, saved from years of birthday money and part-time shelving at the library, had grown exponentially through careful reinvestment and strategic expansion. They didn't know about the algorithms I'd developed to optimize. Tutor-student matching based on learning styles and subject mastery levels. They were unaware of the venture capital meeting I'd taken last month, disguised as a study group, where investors had valued my company at $2 million and offered $1. $4 million for a 17% stake. They had never asked why I spent so many evenings in my room with my door closed. They assumed I was studying while I was actually managing a team of 26 part-time employees, negotiating contracts with school administrators, and developing the mobile application that had just launched. In beta last week, the full scholarship I'd hoped for from Westfield wasn't just for financial necessity. It was to avoid explaining to my parents why I didn't actually need their college fund. I had planned to keep my business success private until after graduation, allowing me to grow my company without their well-intentioned but controlling involvement. Now, staring at their expectant faces, waiting for my acknowledgement that their decision was reasonable, that their reallocation of my future was acceptable, I realized I had a choice. I could reveal everything, prove I didn't need their money, after all. Or I could keep my success private, maintaining the independence that had allowed me to build something entirely my own. I understand, I finally said, the words feeling oddly liberating. I'll figure it out. My mother's shoulders relaxed visibly. My father nodded with approval at my maturity. They had expected resistance, tears, perhaps a teenage outburst. Instead, they received calm acceptance they mistook for acquiescence rather than recognizing it as strategic decision. That's our girl, my father said, pride mixing with relief. Always practical. I excused myself and returned to my room, closing the door quietly behind me. On my desk, my laptop displayed an email I'd received earlier but hadn't opened yet. Confirmation from my attorney that the venture capital agreement was ready for signatures. The subject line read, Minder Market Funding Round Finalized. $1, 4M ready for transfer. The irony wasn't lost on me. In the same moment my parents eliminated the financial support they had promised throughout my childhood, the business I'd built without their knowledge or assistance was about to deposit 20 times that amount into an account they didn't know existed. I opened the acceptance letter from Westfield again, reading the details more carefully now. The partial scholarship covered $2,400 annually, not insignificant, but leaving a substantial gap of $47,600 per year. Without the college fund, most students would be looking at crushing loan debt by graduation. My phone buzzed with a text from Layla, my best friend and the only person who knew about Minder Market. Did you tell them yet about the VC deal? She wrote. No, I replied, and I'm not going to. Things just got interesting at home. What happened? I considered how to explain the situation, finally settling on the simplest truth. They gave my college fund to Tyler, all of it. Layla's response was immediate and indignant, filled with explosive emoji and suggestions for confrontation. I appreciated her loyalty, but felt oddly detached from her outrage. The betrayal stung. Certainly, but beneath the initial hurt bloomed something unexpected, a sense of freedom and clarity. My parents' decision had inadvertently released me from the weight of meeting their expectations. The unspoken contract of my childhood, academic perfection in exchange for financial support, had been unilaterally terminated. And in its absence, I found myself fully owning the success I'd built independently. I picked up my phone again and texted Layla back. Actually, I think this might be the best thing that could have happened. My laptop pinged with an incoming video call request. Jason Chen, the lead investor from Horizon Ventures. I straightened my posture, adjusted my expression to project confident professionalism, and accepted the call. Emma, great news, Jason began without preamble. The partners have approved the full amount at the valuation we discussed. We can wire the funds as early as tomorrow if you're ready to sign. I glanced at my bedroom door, behind which my parents were still sitting at the kitchen table, probably congratulating themselves on how well I'd taken their news. I'm ready, I confirmed, and I have a proposition for expanding our growth timeline. I've been considering accelerating our development schedule and pursuing the school district contracts in the Pacific Northwest immediately, rather than waiting until next year. Jason's eyebrows raised with interest. That's ambitious. The projections you showed us had that expansion planned for after your first year of college, with you in a more advisory role while you focused on your studies. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Plans change, I replied simply. I'm considering deferring enrollment for a year to focus on growth phase implementation. Minder Market is at a critical inflection point, and I believe my full attention would yield significantly higher returns than splitting focus between business and academics. The words emerged with surprising ease, a decision crystallizing in real time. Westfield would still be there next year, or the year after. The partial scholarship could potentially increase with demonstrated financial need now that my expected family contribution had vanished. Or perhaps I would choose a different educational path entirely, one aligned with my already thriving business rather than the traditional route my parents had always assumed for me. Interesting pivot, Jason noted, studying my expression. Is something else factoring into this decision? When we met last month, you were quite committed to balancing business growth with your education. Let's just say I've recently gained clarity about my priorities, I answered diplomatically. Sometimes the best motivation comes from unexpected sources. After finishing the call with Jason and confirming the wire transfer details for the following day, I sat quietly at my desk, allowing the full reality of my situation to settle in. By this time tomorrow, I would have $4 million in business capital under my control. My company valuation would officially place me in a financial category my parents couldn't imagine, certainly not for their responsible but naive daughter. The anger I had initially suppressed began to surface, not as destructive rage, but as clarifying fuel. My parents had made their choice based on their perception of who I was, or rather, who they thought I was. They saw the straight-A student, who would figure it out because she always had. They never bothered to discover what I was figuring out while they were focused elsewhere. In fairness, I had kept my business achievements private deliberately, initially from teenage desire for independence, later from strategic preference for operating without parental interference. Perhaps I couldn't blame them entirely for misjudging my capabilities when I had carefully ensured they had incomplete information. Yet the ease with which they had redistributed my future revealed something essential about our relationship. Their confidence in my self-sufficiency had become convenient justification for withdrawing support. My competence had been weaponized against me, twisted into rationale for why I deserved less while my brother deserved more. I pulled out a notebook and began methodically listing my options. The organized approach to problem-solving that had built my business now applied to my personal crossroads. The logical pathways spread across the page. 1. Attend Westfield with loans and part-time business management. 2. Defer enrollment for 1 year, focus on business growth, reapply for additional scholarships. 3. Choose a less expensive university, using business revenue for tuition while maintaining control of expansion. 4. Forgo traditional college entirely, redirecting educational investment into targeted business training and mentorship. Each option held different advantages, different potential futures. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider paths my parents had never imagined for me. Possibilities beyond the narrow definition of success they had always expected me to fulfill. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. Tyler stood in the doorway, his expression a mixture of guilt and concern. "Can I come in?" he asked hesitantly. I nodded, closing my notebook. Whatever complicated feelings I had about our parents' decision, none of them were directed at my brother. "I told them it wasn't fair," he said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "I said I could go to public school for another year while they saved more money." "It's not your responsibility to fix this, Ty," I assured him. "Grayson Academy sounds like exactly what you need right now." "But what about what you need?" he persisted. "You've worked so hard for Westfield. It's not right that they just took your future and gave it to me." His phrasing struck me. Took your future. The words encapsulating exactly how it had felt in that moment of revelation. Yet somehow, hearing them from his mouth transformed my perspective. "They didn't take my future," I replied, the truth of it becoming clearer as I spoke. "They just took their version of my future. The actual future is still entirely mine." Tyler looked confused. "What does that mean?" I considered how much to share with my brother. At 15, he was perceptive, but still navigated the world with the straightforward trust of someone whose parents had always advocated fiercely on his behalf. Unlike me, He had never needed to develop the independence born from being overlooked. "It means I have options they don't know about," I said carefully. "I'll be fine, Ty. Better than fine, actually." He studied my face with the particular intensity that was uniquely his. Beneath his learning challenges lay an emotional intelligence that often surprised people who underestimated him. "You've got something going on," he observed. "Something big that Mom and Dad don't know about." I smiled slightly. "Maybe." "Is it legal?" he asked, only half joking. My laugh was genuine. "Completely legal, just private." He nodded, slowly accepting this boundary without further questioning. "Will you tell me someday?" "Someday soon," I promised, "when everything's settled." After Tyler left, I returned to my notebook, the options I'd listed earlier now appearing incomplete. There was another pathway emerging, one that addressed both the practical realities of my situation and the emotional complexities of my family relationships. I opened my laptop and began researching apartment rentals near the Horizon Ventures offices. If I was going to commit fully to business development for the next year, proximity to my investors and advisors would be strategically advantageous. The thought of moving out, of establishing independence not just financially but physically, sparked both anxiety and exhilaration. My phone buzzed with an email notification from Westfield's admissions office, responding to a deferment inquiry I didn't remember sending. Confused, I opened the message to find they were confirming receipt of my deferment request due to extraordinary entrepreneurial opportunity and would hold my partial scholarship for the following academic year. A second email arrived moments later, this one from Layla. "I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of drafting a deferment request using that template we created for Jennifer's gap year application. Figured you might need options while processing your parents' betrayal. Feel free to follow up with Westfield if you want to pursue a different path. Love you either way." I smiled at my friend's presumptuousness and surprising accuracy. She had anticipated exactly the direction my thoughts were heading, removing one administrative obstacle before I'd even articulated my plan. The path forward was beginning to crystallize, not with the clarity of certainty, but with the tentative shape of possibility. I would sign the venture capital agreement tomorrow. I would accelerate Minder Market's expansion timeline. I would find an apartment near the business district. I would defer college for at least 1 year. And through it all, I would maintain the privacy of my success, allowing my parents to believe I was simply figuring it out as they expected. Not from spite or secrecy, but from the growing recognition that the greatest freedom lay in being underestimated, in building something extraordinary while others assumed you were merely coping. The last light of evening faded outside my window as I finalized my plans, a strange sense of gratitude gradually replacing my initial hurt. My parents' decision, intended to solve one problem, had inadvertently liberated me from the constraints of their expectations. In redistributing resources toward my brother's needs, they had unwittingly given me something far more valuable than a college fund: the absolute freedom to define success entirely on my own terms. Tomorrow would begin, the first day of my independent life. Tomorrow, I would become a millionaire while my parents believed I was scrambling for student loans. Tomorrow, the future they thought they had redirected would reveal itself as a path I had already been paving, brick by meticulous brick, while they were looking elsewhere. I closed my notebook, a sense of calm purpose replacing the turmoil of earlier hours. The day had begun with betrayal but would end with determination. My parents gave my college fund to my brother. They had no idea I'd been building a fortune behind their backs. And for now, that would remain exactly how I wanted it. The signature on the venture capital agreement felt like more than a business transaction. It was a declaration of independence. Sitting in the glass-walled conference room at Horizon Ventures, surrounded by investors twice my age in tailored suits, I maintained the composed demeanor I'd cultivated through dozens of virtual pitches and strategy sessions. only the slight tremor in my hand as I completed the final signature betrayed the magnitude of the moment. "Congratulations, Emma," Jason Chen said, sliding the signed agreement to the paralegal for processing. "You're officially the youngest founder in our portfolio." Patrick Donnelly, the managing partner who had initially been skeptical about investing in a teenager's company, nodded with newfound respect. "The wire transfer will be completed by end of business today. $4 million for 17% equity, exactly as agreed." "Thank you for your confidence," I replied, the practiced response masking the exhilaration building beneath my professional veneer. Minder Market's expansion strategy begins implementation immediately. The remainder of the meeting passed in a blur of projected timelines, milestone expectations, and governance protocols. I answered questions with the detailed precision that had impressed these investors initially, demonstrating my comprehensive understanding of both educational market dynamics and technical implementation challenges. By the time we concluded, even Patrick's earlier reservations seemed fully resolved. "Your parents must be extraordinarily proud," he commented as we gathered our materials. "Not many teenagers build seven-figure companies from their bedrooms." The question momentarily caught me off guard. Throughout the negotiation process, I had skillfully avoided discussing my age or family situation, focusing exclusively on business metrics and growth projections. The investors knew I was young. My ID verification for the banking documents had confirmed that. But I had carefully maintained an ambiguous narrative around my personal circumstances. "My family situation is complicated," I answered diplomatically. "Minder Market has been a primarily independent venture." Jason gave Patrick a subtle look that suggested this topic had already been privately discussed. "Emma's demonstrated remarkable self-sufficiency," he interjected smoothly. "That's precisely what impressed our investment committee." I offered a grateful nod to Jason as we exited the conference room. In our preliminary discussions, I had shared just enough about my circumstances for him to understand my desire for operational independence without revealing the full complexity of my family dynamics. "We've arranged temporary access to our incubator space while you secure permanent offices," Jason explained as he walked me through Horizon's sleek headquarters. "Full administrative support, meeting rooms when needed, and our technical team available for consultation should help with the transition." The transition he referenced extended beyond business infrastructure to personal circumstances he couldn't fully comprehend. In the 24 hours since discovering my parents had emptied my college fund, I had set in motion plans that would completely transform my life trajectory. The apartment I had researched last night had already been secured with a deposit this morning. A one-bedroom unit in the business district, available for immediate occupancy thanks to an expedited application and 3 months' rent paid up front from my existing business account. "That's extremely helpful," I acknowledged. "I expect to be fully operational from independent office space within 60 days, but the incubator will facilitate immediate scaling." As we reached the building lobby, Jason hesitated before offering a final observation. "You know, most founders we back take at least a few days to celebrate before diving into implementation. Maybe consider giving yourself an evening to appreciate this milestone." 18 and securing seven-figure funding is genuinely extraordinary. His suggestion, while well-intentioned, revealed the gap between his perception of my circumstances and reality. He assumed I had the luxury of celebration, of pausing to acknowledge achievement before moving forward. He couldn't understand the urgency driving my acceleration, not just business opportunity, but personal necessity. "I'll consider it," I promised non-committally, knowing my evening was already allocated to moving essential belongings to my new apartment while my parents attended Tyler's school orientation, the first step in extracting myself from home without immediate confrontation. Outside the Horizon building, I checked my phone to find 6 missed calls from my mother and a text asking where I was, as she had stopped by the library expecting to find me there. I had told my parents I was researching scholarship options, a reasonable excuse for an all-day absence that aligned with their expectations of how I would figure out my college financing. I texted back a brief reply. Still at library, making progress on financial aid applications. Don't wait dinner for me. The casual deception came with surprising ease, justified by the larger truth my parents had demonstrated with their actions. They considered me capable of handling my own affairs, so I was simply fulfilling their expectations in ways they couldn't anticipate. Instead of returning home, I directed my rideshare to the address that would become my new residence, a modern apartment building called the Meridian, selected specifically for its proximity to both the business district and the university I might eventually attend. The studio apartment on the 12th floor was smaller than my bedroom at home, but represented something infinitely more valuable, space that was entirely mine, secured through my own resources, subject to no one's authority, but my own. The leasing agent who met me in the lobby seemed momentarily surprised by my youth, but processed my paperwork efficiently after confirming my business credentials and bank verification. The financial documentation I provided, showing Minder Market's consistent revenue stream and the substantial business account in my name, overcame any hesitation about renting to an 18-year-old. Everything seems in order, Ms. Blackwood, she confirmed, handing me 2 sets of keys and an electronic fob for building access. Your unit is fully furnished as requested. Utilities are included in your rent, and the building offers concierge service from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. daily. The apartment itself was exactly what I needed, functionally elegant without wasted space. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city skyline, the university's Gothic towers visible in the POW distance. The furnishings were modern and minimalist, providing essentials without imposing character. This blank canvas would become both home and headquarters as I navigated the next phase of my life. Standing alone in this empty space, I allowed myself a moment of unfiltered emotion, the release of tension I had carefully contained throughout meetings with investors and leasing agents. The anger, hurt, and determination that had propelled me through the past 24 hours converged in a wave of overwhelming intensity. I wasn't just securing business funding or renting an apartment. I was fundamentally rewriting the narrative of my life, shifting from dependent daughter to independent adult without the transitional buffer most college students experienced. My phone vibrated with another text from my mother. Dad and I are leaving for Tyler's orientation. Leftovers in the fridge. Financial aid office at Westfield closes at 5 p.m. if you want to call them today. Her message crystallized the parallel. Realities I now inhabited. In her understanding, I was a diligent daughter researching scholarship options, adjusting to disappointment with practical resilience. Meanwhile, I had just signed papers making me the recipient of $4 million in DI venture capital and secured an independent apartment where I planned to live while running my expanding company. The divergence between these narratives should have felt deceptive, yet instead seemed like the natural culmination of years of mismatched perceptions. My parents had consistently viewed me through a lens of their own construction. The responsible child who needed minimal attention because she always succeeded independently. I had simply fulfilled their perception to its logical extreme, succeeding so independently they couldn't comprehend the magnitude of what I had built. I responded with deliberate vagueness. Thanks. Making good progress here. With my parents. Now headed to Tyler's school orientation, a 2-hour drive each way plus the extended program, I had the perfect window to retrieve essential belongings from home without confrontation. I had already prepared mentally for this practical extraction, identifying the irreplaceable items I would need immediately while leaving enough personal effects behind to avoid triggering immediate questions about my intentions. The rideshare. Back to my parents' house took 20 minutes, during which I finalized logistics with Layla, who had agreed to help with the move. Are you sure about this? She texted. Moving out without telling them seems extreme, even considering what they did. I'm not disappearing, I clarified. Just establishing necessary space. They'll know where I am, eventually. When I arrived home, Layla was waiting in her car, trunk already empty in preparation for transporting my belongings. Her expression conveyed concern, mixed with reluctant admiration. This is either the most badass response to parental betrayal in history, or a quarter-life crisis happening about 7 years early, she observed, following me inside. Possibly both. It's a strategic business decision with personal benefits, I replied, heading upstairs to begin selecting items for immediate relocation. Minder Market needs dedicated leadership during this expansion phase. The venture capital timeline doesn't accommodate family drama. Layla raised an eyebrow. Right. Nothing to do with showing your parents they severely underestimated you. I paused in the middle of filling a suitcase with carefully selected clothing. That's not the primary motivation. But definitely a satisfying side effect, she pressed. Perhaps, I conceded, resuming my methodical packing. But this isn't about revenge. It's about creating necessary conditions for success on my own terms. We worked efficiently, filling her car with the essentials I would need immediately. Clothing, personal care items, my primary laptop and technical equipment, financial documents, and a few sentimental objects with irreplaceable value. I left enough in my room to maintain the appearance that I was still living at home. Books on shelves, decorative items on surfaces, less frequently worn clothing in drawers. What exactly are you going to tell them? Layla asked as we carried the last load to her car. When they realize you're not sleeping here anymore? It was the question I had been carefully avoiding in my strategic planning, the emotional confrontation that would inevitably follow my practical extraction. The logical pathways of business expansion were straightforward, compared to the complex negotiations of family relationships, transformed by unexpected revelations. The truth, I finally decided. Just not all at once. They'll get information proportional to their demonstrated readiness to understand what I've built. Layla looked skeptical. And you think they'll just accept that you've moved out at 18 without parental support because... Why exactly? You're suddenly independently wealthy from a secret business they know nothing about? They already believe I can figure things out independently, I reminded her, closing the trunk on the physical representations of my transition. I'm simply exceeding their expectations. Back at the Meridian, we transferred my belongings to the apartment that would serve as both living space and temporary business headquarters. The process was quick, but weighted with significance. Each item placed representing another step into self-determined adulthood. It's actually nice, Layla acknowledged, surveying the space after we had arranged my belongings. Sterile, but nice. Very you. Functional, I corrected. And exclusively mine. So what happens tomorrow? She asked, settling onto the modern sofa that had come with the furnished unit. You just don't go home? Start running your million-dollar company from this apartment while your parents think you're at the library applying for scholarships? Put so bluntly, the situation sounded more extreme than it had in my carefully reasoned planning. Yet the alternative, immediately revealing everything to parents who had demonstrated they didn't truly see me, felt equally impossible. Tomorrow I meet with my development team to accelerate our timeline for the Pacific Northwest expansion, I explained, focusing on the structured certainty of business operations rather than the messy complexity of family dynamics. I'll text my parents that I'm staying with you to work on scholarship applications. It buys me 48 hours to establish operational systems here before navigating the personal conversation. Layla's expression suggested she found this approach dubiously rational, but wasn't going to argue further. And when those 48 hours are up? I sank into the chair opposite her, finally acknowledging the emotional complexity I had been methodically avoiding through practical action. Then I start the process of helping them understand who I actually am, rather than who they've assumed I am. After Layla left, I spent the evening configuring my new space for optimal functionality. The dining table became a workstation. The second bedroom was designated as a meeting area for when team members would eventually visit. Digital systems were established to forward business calls and centralize communications that had previously been carefully segregated to prevent parental discovery. Throughout these practical arrangements, my phone occasionally lit up with texts from my mother. Orientation going well. Tyler loves the campus. Did you reach financial aid office? We'll be home around 10:30. Don't wait up. Each message operated on assumptions that no longer applied, that I was at home awaiting their return, that I was pursuing traditional financial aid as my only option, that our family configuration remained unchanged despite their unilateral decision regarding my education. I responded with minimal information, maintaining the illusion of normalcy while establishing my new reality. At precisely 5:00 p.m., my business phone rang with the call I had been anticipating, confirmation of the completed wire transfer from Horizon Ventures. The financial officer verified that $4 million had been successfully deposited into Minder Market's business account, officially transforming me from promising entrepreneur to venture-backed founder. Congratulations, Ms. Blackwood, she concluded. The funds are available immediately for operational deployment according to your submitted business plan. After the call, I sat quietly in my new apartment, the significance of the day's transitions washing over me in waves. Within 24 hours, I had signed a major investment agreement, secured independent housing, extracted essential belongings from my childhood home, and established operational headquarters for the next phase of my business. The decisive efficiency of these actions masked the emotional complexity underlying them. Beyond the practical logistics of business expansion and physical relocation, lay questions I had deliberately avoided confronting directly. What kind of relationship did I want with parents who had demonstrated such fundamental misunderstanding of who I was? How much of my success did I want to reveal, and in what time frame? What boundaries needed establishment to protect both my business autonomy and emotional well-being? The venture capital funds now at my disposal represented more than business opportunity. They offered freedom from financial dependence that most 18-year-olds couldn't imagine. Yet this financial independence came with responsibilities few teenagers had to navigate: managing a growing team, fulfilling investor expectations, making strategic decisions that would affect both company valuation and educational opportunities. I opened my laptop and began a methodical review of the expansion strategy I would present to my development team tomorrow. The Pacific Northwest school districts we were targeting represented potential contracts worth over $2 million annually if secured within the accelerated timeline. The technical infrastructure required significant enhancement to support this regional growth, with database architecture and user experience modifications needed before approaching district administrators. The detailed analytics and implementation planning provided comforting structure amid the personal upheaval. In business operations, variables could be controlled, outcomes predicted, resources allocated according to logical priorities. The human variables of family relationships proved far less amenable to systematic management. My phone vibrated with a text from Tyler. "Miss you at orientation. Mom keeps showing everyone my baby pictures." His message prompted an unexpected wave of emotion. Despite my determination to establish independence, I felt a pang of protectiveness toward my brother. He hadn't asked to be at the center of our parents' financial reallocation. He deserved the educational support they were providing, even if the method of providing it had revealed painful truths about their perception of me. "Endure the embarrassment bravely," I texted back. "The education will be worth it." "Everything okay with you?" he responded immediately. "You seemed weird yesterday." His perceptiveness had always exceeded our parents when it came to emotional undercurrents. While they saw what they expected to see, Tyler noticed what actually existed beneath surface appearances. "Everything's fine," I assured him, the partial truth justified by protective intention. "Just figuring things out, like always." The phrase, "figuring things out, like always," captured the essence of what had brought me to this moment of transition. My parents had consistently relied on my capacity to handle challenges independently, never questioning what that independence might eventually produce. They had reinforced self-sufficiency as my defining characteristic, without considering where that trait might ultimately lead. Now, sitting in an apartment secured through resources they didn't know I possessed, preparing to lead a company they didn't know I had built, I was figuring things out on a scale they couldn't comprehend. Their decision regarding my college fund had simply accelerated a process of separation that had been developing since I first recognized the power of being underestimated. As evening deepened into night, I finalized my presentation for tomorrow's team meeting and configured the apartment for optimal work functionality. The venture capital would enable hiring key positions I had previously handled myself, expanding technical infrastructure beyond what bootstrap funding had allowed, and implementing marketing strategies targeted specifically at educational administrators with district-level purchasing authority. The accelerated implementation timeline would require intense focus over the coming weeks, exactly the immersive distraction I needed while navigating the personal transitions occurring simultaneously. Business growth provided measurable progress, clear objectives, defined success metrics. The reconstruction of family relationships offered no such structural clarity. At 10:45 p.m., my mother texted again, "Home now." "You're already asleep? We'll talk in the morning about financial aid options." I responded with calculated ambiguity. "Don't worry about me. I've figured out my next steps. We can talk later." The message wasn't technically dishonest. I had, indeed, figured out my next steps, just not the ones she imagined. We would definitely talk later, though the conversation would unfold quite differently than she anticipated. As I prepared for sleep in my new apartment, I reflected on the extraordinary contrast between my circumstances 24 hours ago and now. Yesterday, I had been a teenager whose college fund had been unexpectedly reallocated, facing apparent financial obstacles to the education I had worked toward for years. Today, I was a venture-backed founder with $1, $4 million in growth capital, living independently in a downtown apartment, preparing to lead my company through significant expansion. The transformation wasn't as sudden as it appeared. The foundation had been built methodically over 4 years of strategic development, careful reinvestment, and protected independence. What had changed was not my capacity or circumstances, but their visibility. The private success I had cultivated behind closed doors was beginning its emergence into observable reality. Tomorrow would bring the first team meeting in my new capacity as venture-backed CEO rather than bootstrap founder. Tomorrow would initiate the expansion strategy that would transform MinderMarket from regional educational support platform to national learning infrastructure. Tomorrow would begin the gradual revelation to my parents that their responsible, achievement-oriented daughter had built something far beyond their limited perception of her capabilities. As I drifted toward sleep, I felt a curious sense of gratitude beneath the lingering hurt of their decision. In reallocating my college fund to my brother, my parents had inadvertently liberated me from the constraints of their expectations. They had cleared the path for me to pursue success defined by my own metrics, rather than conventional milestones they understood. Sometimes the most powerful motivation emerges from unexpected sources. Sometimes being underestimated creates the perfect conditions for extraordinary achievement. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed reveals what you can create entirely, on your own. The MinderMarket development team filled the private meeting room I had reserved at Horizon's incubator space, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. Most had worked with me exclusively through virtual channels. Our constrained bootstrap budget had necessitated remote collaboration and limited in-person interaction. Now, gathered in the gleaming conference room with panoramic city views, the reality of our venture capital success was tangibly evident. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," I began, standing at the head of the polished table that reflected the morning light. "As you know, Horizon Ventures has completed their investment, with funds already accessible for immediate operational deployment." I displayed the expansion strategy on the room's presentation screen, the ambitious timeline prompting several raised eyebrows among the senior developers. The acceleration represented significant compression of our original roadmap, condensing 18 months of projected growth into a 6-month implementation window. This accelerated timeline means restructuring our approach to the Pacific Northwest market entry, I continued, advancing through detailed slides outlining technical infrastructure enhancements, user experience modifications, and administrative interface improvements. We'll need to increase server capacity immediately, enhance database architecture for multi-district scalability, and refine the analytics dashboard for district-level administrative reporting. Marcus Chen, our lead developer who had been with Minder Market since our earliest prototype, leaned forward with professional concern. "This is ambitious even with the new funding, Emma. The customization required for each district's reporting requirements alone would normally require 3 months of development." "Which is why we're expanding the development team immediately," I explained, revealing the next section of the presentation. "The capital infusion allows us to hire 3 additional senior developers, a dedicated UX specialist, and 2 implementation coordinators to manage district onboarding. We'll also engage specialized consultants for educational compliance verification across multiple state jurisdictions." For the next 2 hours, we dissected implementation challenges, technical dependencies, and recruitment priorities. The team's initial skepticism gradually transformed to strategic engagement as we collaboratively refined the accelerated roadmap, identifying critical path elements and potential bottlenecks. By session's end, the ambitious timeline remained aggressive, but had evolved from aspirational to achievable through concentrated resource allocation and parallel workflow structures. "I've arranged for permanent office space in this building," I informed them as we concluded. "We'll be operational there within 2 weeks. Until then, this conference room is reserved for our team's use, with additional collaboration spaces available as needed." As the team gathered their materials, Marcus remained behind, his expression suggesting unasked questions beyond technical considerations. Once we were alone, he spoke with the directness earned through years of collaboration. "You're not planning to attend Westfield this fall, are you?" he observed, referencing the university acceptance I had mentioned during earlier planning discussions. "This implementation timeline doesn't allow for full-time academic commitments. I've deferred enrollment," I confirmed. "The business requires focused leadership during this expansion phase." He nodded thoughtfully. "And your parents? They're supportive of this decision?" The question touched precisely the complicated personal territory I had been systematically avoiding through immersion in operational details. Marcus knew more about my background than most team members. His technical brilliance had been essential to early development, necessitating greater transparency about my age and circumstances than I had shared with others. "They're still processing the implications," I replied carefully. "My timeline for full disclosure is running parallel to our implementation schedule." His expression suggested he understood more than my diplomatic phrasing conveyed. "Significant transitions. On multiple fronts, then. If you need any support beyond technical implementation, the team is behind you. Not just as developers, but as people who believe in what you've built." His unexpected offer of personal support momentarily disrupted my carefully maintained professional composure. Throughout Minder Market's development, I had deliberately established boundaries between business objectives and personal circumstances, compartmentalizing leadership responsibilities from teenage complications. Marcus's simple acknowledgement that these realms inevitably intersected created a brief but noticeable crack in that separation. "Thank you," I managed, quickly recovering my poised demeanor. The next phase will certainly require coordinated effort across all dimensions. After Marcus departed, I remained in the conference room, reviewing recruitment profiles for the positions we needed to fill immediately. My phone had remained deliberately silent throughout the meeting, set to business-only notifications with personal communications muted until professional priorities were addressed. Now, reactivating full functionality, I found 17 missed calls from my mother, 5 from my father, and a stream of increasingly concerned text messages. "Emma, where are you? We need to talk. Your bed wasn't slept in. Call immediately. This isn't funny. If we don't hear from you in an hour, we're calling the police. Layla says you're fine but won't tell us where you are. What's going on? We're worried sick. At least let us know you're safe." The final message had arrived just 20 minutes earlier. "We're going to Layla's house. Her mother says she's at work, but we need answers. This is completely unacceptable behavior." My carefully structured disclosure timeline was collapsing. I had anticipated at least 48 hours to establish operational systems before navigating family revelations. Instead, my absence had accelerated the confrontation timeline significantly, with my parents apparently en route to extract information from my best friend. I immediately called Layla, who answered on the first ring. "Your parents are officially freaking out," she reported without preamble. "Your mom called my mother 4 times this morning. I've been deliberately vague but maintained you're safe. They're apparently coming here after my mom mentioned I'm working at the cafe today." "I'm sorry they're dragging you into this," I said, gathering my materials quickly. "I need to intercept them before they arrive at your workplace. Which cafe location are you at today?" "Downtown on 5th Street, Monday morning shift. I'll be there in 15 minutes, I promised. Say nothing specific until I arrive." Ending the call, I notified the development team that I would be unavailable for the next few hours due to a personal matter, then ordered a rideshare to the cafe, where an unexpected family confrontation now appeared inevitable. The carefully planned revelation of my business success and independent living arrangements would need substantial compression and adaptation to these accelerated circumstances. The rideshare delivered me to the Daily Grind Cafe 10 minutes later. Through the large front windows, I could immediately see Layla behind the counter, her expression relieving as she spotted me approaching. No sign yet of my parents, though their home was at least 20 minutes from downtown, giving me a narrow window to prepare. "They called again while you were en route," Layla informed me as I entered. 5 minutes away. Your mom sounds like she's oscillating between panic and fury. What exactly are you going to tell them?" Enough for them to understand the immediate situation without overwhelming them with full disclosure, I decided, selecting a corner table with strategic positioning, visible from the entrance but offering sufficient privacy for difficult conversation. They need to know I'm safe, financially stable, and living independently. The complete business details can follow when they've processed those fundamental facts. "So you're just going to casually mention you're secretly a tech CEO living in your own apartment at 18? Layla summarized skeptically while preparing coffee I hadn't ordered but apparently recognized I needed. "That should go smoothly." "There's no smooth version of this conversation," I acknowledged, accepting the coffee gratefully. "But maintaining artificial dependence to avoid discomfort serves neither my business requirements nor personal development." Layla rolled her eyes at my formal phrasing, a habit she had long teased me about, particularly when addressing emotional complexities through logical frameworks. "Just try to remember they're processing this as parents, not business associates." Evaluating a strategic pivot. Before I could respond, the cafe door opened and my parents entered, their expressions transforming from worried tension to shocked relief upon seeing me calmly seated with coffee. My mother rushed forward while my father remained momentarily frozen near the entrance, his normally composed features registering confusion, followed by controlled anger. "Emma Catherine Blackwood," my mother exclaimed, dropping into the chair opposite me. Where have you been? We've been worried sick. Your bed wasn't slept in. Your bathroom things are missing. We thought something terrible had happened. My father joined us, his movements deliberately measured as he took the remaining seat. You have exactly 1 minute to explain what's going on before we continue this conversation at home. Their reactions aligned precisely with established patterns. My mother leading with emotional response. My father asserting control through authoritative positioning. Both approaches presumed continued parental authority, despite my legal adult status, automatically categorizing my independence as problematic behavior requiring correction rather than autonomous decision-making. I'm not coming home, I stated calmly, establishing the fundamental boundary immediately. I've secured my own apartment and am pursuing professional opportunities that require my full attention. My mother's expression collapsed from relief to confusion. What are you talking about? You can't just move out without telling us. You're heading to college in the fall. You need to be applying for student loans and scholarships, not playing at independence. I've deferred enrollment at Westfield, I informed them, maintaining composed eye contact. And I don't need student loans or scholarships. My financial situation is stable and self-sufficient. My father's expression darkened with increasing frustration. Emma, enough games. Whatever point you're trying to make about the college fund situation, this is not an appropriate response. Your brother needs the specialized program, as we explained. Acting out won't change that reality. His dismissive categorization of my independence as acting out crystallized exactly why this accelerated confrontation was necessary, if uncomfortable. Despite my legal adulthood and demonstrated responsibility throughout adolescence, he instinctively interpreted autonomous decision-making as childish rebellion rather than legitimate self-determination. This isn't about Tyler's program or the college fund, I clarified, shifting slightly to include both parents in my direct gaze. Though that situation did accelerate my timeline for establishing independence. This is about the fact that I've been running a successful educational technology company for the past 4 years, which yesterday received $1. $4 million in venture capital funding at an $8, $2 million valuation. The statement landed with seismic impact, momentarily silencing both parents. My mother's expression cycled rapidly through disbelief, confusion, and stunned reassessment. My father's features froze in calculated analysis, his corporate training, instinctively engaging to evaluate the credibility of unexpected information. That's not possible, he finally stated, certainty underlying his tone. You're 18. You've been focusing on academics, preparing for college. There's no way you've been secretly running a technology company from your bedroom. Minder Market Educational Technologies, I replied, sliding my business card across the table. Initially, a tutoring matching platform I developed at 15, now providing comprehensive educational support infrastructure for 12 school districts across 3 states. The venture capital agreement with Horizon Ventures was finalized yesterday morning, with funds already deployed for operational expansion. My mother picked up the business card with trembling fingers, studying the embossed logo and professional contact information, as if the tangible evidence might transform the incomprehensible into something she could process. But how? When? We would have noticed something like this. Would you? I countered gently. You saw what you expected to see. An academically focused daughter preparing for college. You interpreted my independence as personality rather than necessity. You categorized my technological interests as college preparation rather than business development. You never questioned where the new laptop came from last year, or why I maintained such structured evening schedules, or how I could afford the programming courses you assumed were extracurricular academics. My father's expression remained skeptical, though uncertainty had begun eroding his confident dismissal. Anyone can print business cards. If this company actually exists, show us concrete evidence, financial statements, legal documentation, verification of this supposed venture capital deal. I had anticipated this response. Demand for verification aligned with his corporate methodologies for evaluating unexpected claims. Rather than appearing defensive, I calmly retrieved my tablet from my bag and opened the secure folder containing key business documentation. Articles of incorporation filed when I turned 16, using the technical legal provision for minors engaging in business activities with demonstrated expertise, I began, displaying the official documents. Quarterly financial statements showing consistent revenue growth over 4 years. Client contracts with school districts in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. And most recently, the executed venture capital agreement with Horizon Ventures, including wire transfer confirmation of the $1.4 million investment completed yesterday afternoon. The sequential presentation of irrefutable evidence gradually transformed my father's expression from skepticism to stunned recalibration. Each document contradicted his fundamental assumption that his teenage daughter could not possibly have built something of significant value without his knowledge or assistance. "But why keep this secret?" my mother asked, focusing on emotional dimensions while my father processed legal and financial implications. "Why not tell us you were building a business? We would have been proud, supportive." The question revealed the essential disconnect between their perception and reality, the assumption that their discovery of my activities would have resulted in simple pride and support rather than attempted control, redirection, or appropriation of decision-making. "I needed operational independence," I explained carefully. "Initially, legal considerations regarding my minor status made limited disclosure prudent. Later, when success became more substantial, I recognized that revealing my business would fundamentally change our family dynamic in ways that might impede continued growth." "That's absurd," my father interjected, finding his voice. "We've always supported your achievements, your independence. We would have helped you navigate business challenges, provided guidance." "The way you provided guidance about my college fund?" I interrupted, the calm question carrying more impact than accusation would have. "You made a unilateral decision about resources explicitly designated for my future because you fundamentally believed I would simply figure it out independently. That assumption accurately reflected how you viewed my capabilities all along. I merely fulfilled your perception to its logical conclusion." The observation landed with precision, momentarily silencing both parents as they confronted the contradiction between their stated supportive intentions and their demonstrated behavioral patterns. My mother's expression shifted toward dawning recognition while my father maintained defensive posture. "That was different," he insisted. "A necessary family decision based on unequal needs between siblings. It had nothing to do with underestimating your capabilities. It had everything to do with how you perceive me fundamentally," I corrected gently. "You've always categorized me as self-sufficient, requiring minimal support because I consistently succeeded independently. That perception wasn't wrong. I am self-sufficient. I have built something valuable through my own efforts. I can indeed figure things out without parental intervention." The misalignment was in assuming my independence wouldn't eventually extend to complete self-determination. My mother reached for my hand across the table, her expression softening with emotional recognition that contrasted with my father's continued analytical resistance. "Emma, we never meant to make you feel you needed to hide your accomplishments. We've always been enormously proud of you." "I know," I acknowledged, accepting her touch briefly before withdrawing to maintain composed boundaries. "But pride in achievements isn't the same as recognizing autonomy. You've been proud of my academic success, my responsible nature, my problem-solving abilities. Those were qualities that reflected well on your parenting while remaining within expected parameters for teenage accomplishment. Minder market represents something categorically different: achievement outside parental oversight or established pathways." My father leaned forward, business instincts apparently overriding parental confusion as he processed the financial implications of what I had revealed. 8.2 million valuation for an educational technology platform developed by a teenager? These investors clearly don't understand the market dynamics if they're throwing that kind of money at an untested concept. His automatic dismissal of my company's value, reducing 4 years of methodical development and demonstrated market success to an untested concept, highlighted exactly why independent operation had been necessary. His corporate lens automatically categorized my business through diminishing parameters rather than engaging with its demonstrated metrics. Horizon Ventures completed extensive market analysis and financial due diligence before offering investment, I replied evenly. Minder Market's existing contracts generate consistent annual revenue with 42% margins, and our proprietary matching algorithms have demonstrated 28% improvement in educational outcomes across implemented districts. The valuation reflects verified performance metrics, not speculative potential. My precise command of business terminology and performance indicators momentarily disoriented him. This language belonged to boardrooms and executive meetings, not family discussions with teenage daughters. The cognitive dissonance was evident in his expression as he struggled to reconcile the professionally articulate CEO before him with the academically successful daughter he thought he understood. I still don't understand why you felt you needed to leave home without telling us, my mother interjected, redirecting toward emotional rather than financial considerations. Regardless of this business situation, we're your parents. You can't just disappear overnight. The accelerated business timeline following venture investment requires dedicated focus and operational independence, I explained. Living independently eliminates unnecessary complications while facilitating optimal work conditions. Additionally, my apartment's proximity to both the business district and eventually Westfield creates strategic advantages for long-term planning. My deliberately professional phrasing maintained emotional distance while conveying practical rationale. The truth, that their decision regarding my college fund had crystallized the necessity for complete independence, remained tacitly present but diplomatically unexpressed. So you've just moved out? Without discussion or planning? My father's tone suggested he was still processing this fundamental shift in family configuration. Where exactly are you living? How are you managing practical considerations, like transportation, household management, security? The questions revealed his instinctive reversion to logistical details he could potentially control rather than engaging with the core reality of my autonomous decision-making. His corporate mind sought operational vulnerabilities rather than acknowledging the fundamental reconfiguration of our relationship. I've secured a furnished apartment at the Meridian, I replied, referencing the upscale downtown building whose reputation would register immediately. All practical considerations have been addressed through careful planning and resource allocation. My relocation was executed efficiently with Layla's assistance. At the mention of her name, all three of us glanced toward the counter where Layla was pretending not to eavesdrop while wiping the same spot repeatedly. She offered an awkward wave before retreating to the back room, providing additional privacy for our increasingly complex conversation. The Meridian costs $2,800 monthly for their smallest units, my father noted, his knowledge of downtown real estate immediately engaging. You expect us to believe you're casually affording luxury apartments on a teenage startup's revenue? The venture capital investment includes allocated funds for appropriate business headquarters during expansion phase, I explained. My living arrangement represents a minor operational expense within our comprehensive financial strategy. My mother pressed her fingertips against her temples, visibly struggling to assimilate the cascade of revelations. This is too much. Too fast. Yesterday we thought you were researching scholarships for college. Today you're telling us you're a secret business owner with millions in funding, living independently in a luxury apartment, deferring college to run a company we didn't even know existed. Her overwhelmed response reflected exactly what I had anticipated. The reason I had originally planned more gradual disclosure rather than compressed revelation. The cognitive recalibration required substantial adjustment to core assumptions about who I was and what I had accomplished without their knowledge. I understand this is significant information to process, I acknowledged, softening my tone slightly. Which is why I had planned more measured disclosure over coming weeks rather than immediate confrontation. Your understandable concern about my unexpected absence accelerated the timeline substantially. You should come home while we figure this out, my father stated, automatic authority resurfacing despite the transformed context. Whatever business situation you've developed, there's no reason for immediate separation from family. We can discuss appropriate next steps together. His phrasing, figure this out, appropriate next steps, revealed continuing expectation of parental authority despite demonstrated evidence of my independent capability and legal adult status. The assumption that my business achievements should remain subject to familial oversight highlighted exactly why separate living arrangements were necessary for operational clarity. I won't be returning home, I stated definitively, maintaining composed eye contact. My apartment is established. Business operations are proceeding on accelerated timeline, and professional obligations require dedicated focus without unnecessary transitions. However, I'm happy to maintain regular family connection through scheduled dinners and appropriate communication. My mother's expression crumpled slightly at this explicit boundary statement. But you're still our daughter. We still need to be involved in your life, your decisions. I am absolutely your daughter, I confirmed, gentleness entering my voice. That relational reality doesn't change because I'm living independently or running a company. What changes is the nature of our connection, from dependent child receiving, direction to adult family member sharing experience. I'm not severing relationship, simply redefining its parameters based on demonstrated realities. My father leaned back, his expression suggesting strategic reassessment rather than emotional processing. I want to see this company of yours, the actual operations, not just documentation. If you're running a legitimate business with genuine investment, there should be no issue with parental site visit. His request represented both challenge and opportunity. Verification would convince him more effectively than continued discussion, while controlled exposure to minor markets, operations would establish appropriate professional boundaries from the outset. I can arrange a tour of our temporary headquarters at Horizon's incubator space tomorrow afternoon, I offered. You'll need to sign standard non-disclosure agreements, as would any visitors to active development operations. I have executive meetings until 2 p.m., but could accommodate a 1-hour overview at 3 p.m. if that fits your schedule. The deliberately professional parameters, limited time frame, formal documentation requirements, scheduled appointment rather than casual visit, established clear demarcation between personal relationship and business operations. My father recognized these boundaries with slight narrowing of his eyes, acknowledging the tactical positioning even as he nodded agreement. 3 o'clock tomorrow works, he confirmed. We'll sign whatever paperwork is necessary. In the meantime, my mother interjected, emotional concern still paramount in her expression. Will you at least come to dinner tonight? We need to talk about this as a family, including your brother. Tyler deserves to understand what's happening too. The request presented complex considerations, maintaining clear independence while demonstrating reasonable family connectivity. Complete separation would create unnecessary emotional damage, while immediate return to established family patterns might undermine the essential boundaries I had established. I can join you for dinner at 7 p.m, I agreed after brief consideration. I have developer interviews scheduled until 6:30 that cannot be rescheduled, and I'll need to return to my apartment afterward to prepare for early meetings tomorrow. The specific parameters transformed what might have been considered normal family dinner into negotiated engagement between autonomous parties. Exactly the relational reconfiguration necessary for sustainable connection moving forward. "We'll expect you at 7 then," my mother confirmed, relief evident in her expression despite the formality of our arrangement. "I'll make that pasta you like." Her immediate reversion to nurturing behavior through food preparation represented her most comfortable pattern of connection, demonstrating care through practical provision rather than navigating complex emotional terrain directly. I recognize this as her authentic attempt at reconciliation within established patterns. As our unexpected confrontation concluded and my parents prepared to leave, my father paused with one final observation. "You know, if you had just told us about this business from the beginning, we could have helped you develop it properly. My corporate connections alone would have—" "That's precisely why I maintained operational privacy," I interrupted gently. Minder Market needed to develop according to educational effectiveness parameters rather than conventional corporate metrics. Its value emerges specifically from student-centered design rather than typical market positioning. His expression suggested this perspective had never occurred to him, that deliberate distance from his corporate approach might represent strategic advantage rather than developmental limitation. This fundamental recalibration of assumed value hierarchy would require substantial processing beyond our current conversation. As they departed, my mother with lingering backward glances and my father with squared shoulders suggesting continued internal resistance, I remained at the corner table, processing the unexpected acceleration of my disclosure timeline. The confrontation had unfolded differently than my planned gradual revelation, yet had established essential boundaries while maintaining possibility for transformed relationship. Layla emerged from the back room, sliding into the seat my mother had vacated. Well, that was intensely civilized for what was essentially a teen declaring independence and revealing secret millionaire status to stunned parents. "You guys are freakishly controlled." Emotional volatility would serve no constructive purpose, I noted, though her observation accurately highlighted my family's characteristic engagement style, contained, analytical, and precision-focused even in moments of significant emotional disruption. "So, family dinner tonight and company tour tomorrow? You're actually letting them into your business world already? Wasn't the whole point to keep those realms separate?" Her question identified the core strategic adjustment I was processing. The accelerated timeline necessitated integrated approach rather than compartmentalized revelation. The challenge now involved establishing appropriate boundaries within connected spheres, rather than maintaining complete separation. Complete separation proved unsustainable given practical circumstances, I acknowledged. Controlled integration, with clearly established parameters, represents more viable long-term strategy. Layla rolled her eyes at my formal phrasing. "In human terms, you'll let them see your impressive company so they'll take you seriously, but you're keeping your apartment as sanctuary from parental involvement." Her translation wasn't entirely inaccurate. The company tour demonstrates credibility while establishing professional boundaries. Independent living arrangements maintain necessary personal autonomy. Both support sustainable redefinition of family relationship within adult parameters. As I prepared to leave for my afternoon developer interviews, I reflected on the unexpected confrontation's outcomes. The accelerated revelation had compressed months of gradual disclosure into a single intense conversation, creating immediate cognitive dissonance for my parents as they struggled to reconcile their perception of their academically successful daughter with the reality of the business leader I had become without their knowledge. The path forward would require careful navigation, maintaining professional boundaries while rebuilding family connection on transformed terms. Yet beneath the pragmatic considerations lay unexpected emotional recognition. Despite the hurt of their decision regarding my college fund, I did not wish to sever family bonds completely. The challenge would be establishing relationship parameters that honored both my demonstrated independence and our genuine connection. My parents had unintentionally created the very conditions that accelerated my full professional emergence. Their reallocation of my college fund had catalyzed the transformation from private entrepreneur to public business leader, from dependent daughter to independent adult. The ultimate irony lay in this unintended consequence. In pushing me to figure it out on my own, they had created space for me to reveal just how completely I already had. The afternoon passed in a blur of developer interviews, each candidate evaluated against exacting technical specifications and cultural alignment criteria. By 6:15, I had completed 5 consecutive assessments, identifying 2 senior developers with implementation experience directly relevant to our Pacific Northwest expansion. The venture capital infusion allowed for competitive salary offers, transforming Minder Market's recruitment capacity from tenuous startup potential to established company certainty. As I prepared to leave for family dinner, Marcus stopped by, the conference room with a tablet displaying preliminary wireframes for the district administrator dashboard modifications. "The team's made significant progress today," he reported, sliding the device across the table. "We've restructured the analytics visualization to accommodate multi-district comparative metrics while maintaining individual district privacy protocols. The design elegantly solved one of our core expansion challenges, providing valuable cross-district performance insights while respecting contractual data isolation requirements." The solution represented exactly the kind of innovative problem-solving that had differentiated Minder Market from corporate educational platforms developed without deep understanding of school district operational realities. "This is excellent work," I acknowledged, examining the interface details. The granular permission controls particularly address Superintendent Wallace's concerns from the Oregon implementation. "The team's motivated by the expansion timeline," Marcus noted. "Everyone recognizes the opportunity these venture resources represent." He hesitated briefly before adding, "How did things go with your parents this morning? Operational boundaries established successfully?" His question reflected the unavoidable intersection of personal and professional domains I was navigating. My accelerated disclosure to my parents indirectly affected company operations through potential disruption of leadership focus. Marcus's interest represented legitimate business concern rather than inappropriate personal curiosity. "Initial boundaries established," I confirmed. "They're scheduled for limited headquarters tour tomorrow afternoon. Standard visitor protocols and confidentiality agreements will apply. I've arranged for the product development presentation to be ready for visitor overview," he assured me. "Comprehensive enough to demonstrate legitimacy while protecting proprietary technical specifications." His proactive preparation highlighted why Marcus had been invaluable throughout Minder Market's development. He consistently anticipated requirements beyond explicit instruction, addressing potential complications before they manifested. This capacity would become increasingly important as our organization expanded beyond my direct oversight of every operational element. "Thank you," I said, gathering my materials in preparation for departure. "I'll be unavailable this evening, but reachable for genuine emergencies. Development coordination resumes at 8 tomorrow morning." Outside Horizons building, I ordered a rideshare to my parents' house, using the 20-minute journey to transition. Mentally, from CEO responsibilities to the complex family dynamics awaiting me, the controlled professional environment of business operations offered clear metrics and defined parameters. Family dinner promised emotional complexities resistant to systematic management. When the rideshare stopped before the familiar 2-story Colonial, where I had spent my entire life until 2 days ago, I experienced momentary dissonance. The house appeared simultaneously intimately familiar and strangely distant, home and not home simultaneously, reflecting my transformed relationship with both the physical space and the family relationships it contained. I approached the front, with measured steps, noting the porch light already illuminated against the gathering evening shadows. Before I could reach for the doorbell, a strange formality suddenly necessary in a place where I had previously entered freely, the Door swung open to reveal Tyler, his expression a mixture of confusion, relief, and budding excitement. "You're actually here," he observed, momentarily blocking the entrance as if uncertain whether to embrace me or maintain cautious distance. "Mom's been stress cooking for hours. Dad's been making business calls in his office. Nobody will tell me what's going on except that you're not living here anymore, and there's some big secret everyone's processing." His direct assessment captured the household dynamics perfectly. My mother channeling emotional processing through practical activity, my father retreating to familiar professional territory amid personal uncertainty, and my brother left navigating informational gaps created by adult attempts at protection through omission. "It's complicated," I acknowledged, offering a smile that recognized his perceptiveness rather than dismissing his confusion. "But I promise you'll understand everything after dinner." He studied my face with characteristic analytical intensity. Beneath his learning differences lay exceptional emotional intelligence and pattern recognition capabilities. "You seem different. More. I don't know. Solid somehow." His observation captured something essential about my transformation. Not just external circumstances, but internal integration had shifted, aligning my public persona more completely with my private capabilities. The compartmentalization required to maintain my business privacy while performing expected daughter behaviors had dissolved, allowing more authentic self-expression across contexts. "Perspective changes when circumstances evolve," I replied, gently guiding him aside so I could enter. "Sometimes becoming who you actually are feels more solid than maintaining who others expect you to be." He nodded slowly, processing this concept with his characteristic thoughtfulness. "That makes sense. Like when my ADHD diagnosis finally explained why school was always harder for me than everyone else. Knowing the real reason felt more solid than just thinking I wasn't trying hard enough." His parallel demonstrated precisely why Tyler had always connected with me differently than our parents did. Beneath surface differences in academic performance and learning styles, we shared fundamental experience of navigating expectations that didn't align with our authentic capabilities. His challenges had been visible and externally addressed. Mine had been invisible and internally managed, but both required reconciliation between perception and reality. We moved toward the dining room, where my mother was arranging place settings with meticulous attention that betrayed her nervous energy. She looked up as we entered, her expression shifting rapidly from apprehension to forced brightness. "Emma, right on time," she exclaimed, smoothing her already perfect table linen. "I made pesto pasta with those sun-dried tomatoes you like, and garlic bread, and salad with the raspberry vinaigrette, and I thought maybe tiramisu for dessert since you always—" "Mom," I interrupted gently, recognizing her spiral into excessive nurturing as anxiety response. "The food looks wonderful. Thank you for making dinner." She paused, hands stilling on the napkin she had been needlessly readjusting. "I just want things to feel normal, even if they're not." The simple admission revealed the emotional core beneath her practical activities, desperate desire to preserve family connection despite fundamental disruption of established patterns. For all her difficulty fully seeing who I had become, her genuine wish to maintain relationship deserved recognition. "Different doesn't have to mean disconnected," I offered, accepting the glass of water she automatically provided. "Relationships evolve when circumstances change, but evolution doesn't require dissolution." Before she could respond, my father entered from his home office, his business phone still in hand, though apparently concluded from his call. His expression suggested controlled neutrality, the professional mask he adopted when navigating challenging negotiations. "Good, you're here," he noted with practiced casualness. "I've been researching educational technology market valuations. Interesting sector with notably volatile metrics. We should discuss comparative acquisition patterns after dinner." His immediate pivot to analytical business assessment rather than personal greeting revealed his coping mechanism, translating emotional complexity into familiar professional territory, where he felt greater confidence and control. Rather than engaging with the personal dimensions of my independent decision-making, he sought to establish credibility in my business domain through demonstration of market knowledge. Market analysis is certainly relevant to growth strategy, I acknowledged neutrally, though Minder Market's education-first approach differentiates our valuation metrics from standard market patterns. This professional-to-professional exchange established subtle boundary, while accepting engagement on his preferred analytical terms, a diplomatic compromise that maintained connection without surrendering autonomous positioning. My mother observed this interaction with visible discomfort, uncertainty about her role in this transformed dynamic, evident in her expression. "Let's eat while everything's still hot," she suggested, defaulting to practical caretaking as conversational redirection. "Tyler, would you help bring the serving dishes from the kitchen?" Dinner initially progressed with stilted conversation focused on safe topics, the unusually warm weather, Tyler's upcoming school orientation, neighborhood developments discussed with careful precision. The deliberate avoidance of substantive issues created artificial performance quality to our interaction, each family member navigating invisible conversational boundaries with cautious preservation of temporary normalcy. Finally, Tyler placed his fork down with decisive motion that interrupted our choreographed avoidance. "Okay, enough weird small talk. What exactly is going on? Mom and Dad have been acting strange all day. Emma's apparently moved out overnight. And everyone's pretending nothing significant is happening while having entire conversations with their eyebrows." His direct challenge shattered the pretense of ordinary family dinner, creating momentary silence as three adults recalibrated response strategies. My mother looked to my father, who shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Their silent exchange suggested neither had prepared for explaining the situation to my brother. "Tyler deserves accurate information," I observed, setting my own utensils aside. "Especially since family circumstances affect him directly." My father cleared his throat. "It's complicated adult business matters, Tyler. Your sister has apparently been developing some kind of educational software project and has decided to live independently while pursuing this hobby." His diminishing characterization, software project, and hobby, rather than established company with significant investment, revealed continued resistance to fully acknowledging the magnitude of what I had built. This reduction served psychological purpose for him, maintaining parental authority positioning through implied superiority of judgment. "It's considerably more than a hobby," I corrected calmly. "Minder Market is an established educational technology company, serving 12 school districts across 3 states. With 26 employees and, as of yesterday, $1.4 million in venture capital investment at an $8.2 million valuation." Tyler's eyes widened, fork suspended midway to his mouth. "Wait, what? You own $1 million company? Since when?" "Since approximately 4 years ago, though growth has accelerated significantly in the past 18 months, I explained, turning toward him directly. "I developed the initial platform to address inefficiencies in educational support distribution. The system uses proprietary algorithms to match students with tutors based on learning style compatibility, rather than just subject expertise." "That's why you were always coding in your room?" he asked, pieces visibly connecting in his rapid processing mind. "I thought you were just doing extra credit computer science stuff." "The early development required significant evening programming," I confirmed. "The venture capital investment now allows for expanded professional development team and accelerated implementation timeline." My mother interjected, her expression suggesting continued struggle with this transformed understanding of her daughter. "Emma, I still don't understand why you kept this secret from us. We're your parents. We would have supported your interests, helped you navigate business challenges." Her question reflected genuine confusion rather than accusation, inability to reconcile her perception of supportive parenting with my experienced necessity for operational independence. The disconnection revealed foundational misalignment in how we interpreted our family dynamic. Your concept of support inherently included oversight and direction, I explained carefully. Minder Market required developmental autonomy to establish educational outcome-focused methodology rather than conventional profit-centered metrics. Additionally, as a minor when the company began, limited disclosure provided legal advantages for operational implementation. My father's expression darkened with familiar frustration. That's ridiculous. My business experience would have been invaluable in helping you avoid amateur mistakes and establish proper growth parameters. Instead, you've operated in secret, potentially exposing yourself to significant liability and market vulnerabilities without proper guidance. His automatic positioning as superior authority, despite demonstrated evidence of my business success, highlighted exactly why independent development had been necessary. His corporate lens prevented recognition that proper business methodology might differ fundamentally between education-centered platforms and profit-maximizing corporate structures. Your business experience centers on corporate acquisition and margin optimization, I noted without confrontational tone. Minder Market's foundational methodology prioritizes educational outcome improvement with sustainable operational margins rather than profit maximization. These different primary objectives require different development approaches. Tyler followed this exchange with evident fascination, his gaze bouncing between participants like watching intellectual tennis match. So basically, he summarized, with characteristic directness, you built a whole company in secret because you knew Dad would try to make it more corporate and less about actually helping students learn better. His simplified but essentially accurate assessment momentarily silenced the table. My father's expression registered surprise, followed by defensive repositioning, while my mother appeared caught between appreciation for Tyler's clarity and concern about potential conflict escalation. There were multiple considerations beyond corporate educational philosophical alignment, I noted diplomatically, including practical management of minor status legal implications and optimal developmental sequencing for platform architecture. But that was part of it, Tyler pressed, demonstrating his characteristic ability to identify core emotional truths beneath logical frameworks. You kept it secret because you wanted to build it your way, rather than having to fight about how it should work. The directness of his assessment created momentary vulnerability in my carefully maintained composure. His emotional intelligence had cut through complex justifications to identify a fundamental truth I had systematically avoided explicitly acknowledging: fear that parental involvement would require constant defense of educational outcome prioritized methodology against corporate success metrics. That was one factor in a multidimensional decision matrix, I acknowledged, the formal phrasing providing emotional distance from uncomfortable recognition. My father leaned forward, expression, suggesting this acknowledgement had triggered competitive response rather than reflective consideration. And now that you've secured this venture capital, from investors who likely don't understand educational market dynamics, you believe you've proven your approach superior? Despite lacking any substantial business experience beyond adolescent experimentation. His dismissive framing, adolescent experimentation rather than demonstrated market success, revealed continued resistance to recognizing my achievement as legitimate rather than fortunate anomaly. This perspective allowed him to maintain position as authoritative guide rather than equal professional with different expertise domain. The results speak for themselves, I replied evenly. Minder Market's implementation across 12 districts has demonstrated 28% improvement in educational outcomes with 42% operational margins. These metrics attracted venture investment based on demonstrated performance rather than speculative potential. Tyler whistled softly. That's seriously impressive, Em. How many students use your platform now? His genuine interest in actual impact rather than financial metrics or authority positioning offered refreshing contrast to our parents' responses. His learning challenges had given him direct appreciation for educational support systems that prioritized student experience over institutional convenience. Currently, 17,346 active student users with 1,023 verified tutors, I provided. The Pacific Northwest expansion will potentially add approximately 30,000 additional students across 8 districts currently in contract negotiation. And all this time, while we thought you were just studying in your room, you were actually running this whole operation? My mother asked, still processing the magnitude of what had developed without her awareness. Managing employees, talking to school districts, building complex systems? Her question contained dawning recognition that her perceived understanding of her daughter had been fundamentally incomplete, constructed from observed academic achievements, and assumed conventional ambitions rather than direct engagement with my actual capabilities and interests. Minder market operations required structured time management and strategic privacy, I confirmed. Remote team coordination and district administrator communications were conducted during designated evening blocks you interpreted as study sessions. But why move out now? Tyler asked, returning to the practical question that had initiated our family discussion. Why not just tell everyone about the company but keep living at home while you run it? His logical question cut through peripheral issues to central practical consideration. My father leaned forward with increased interest, clearly considering this reasonable challenge to my independent living arrangement. The venture capital implementation timeline requires focused leadership without transitional complications, I explained. Additionally, my apartment's proximity to both business headquarters and eventually Westfield University creates strategic advantages for long-term integration of educational and professional objectives. Tyler studied me with his characteristic perceptiveness. And you also wanted your own space because Mom and Dad giving my school program all your college money made you realize you needed to be completely independent from them, not just secretly independent while living here. His direct identification of emotional truth beneath logical justification momentarily disrupted my composed facade. My parents both stilled, his statement making explicit the connection between their financial decision and my accelerated independence, that I had deliberately avoided articulating so directly. The college fund reallocation demonstrated legitimate resource prioritization based on differential educational needs, I acknowledged carefully. That decision also clarified the appropriateness of complete operational independence, rather than continued partial dependence within family structure. My diplomatic phrasing softened but did not eliminate the fundamental connection Tyler had identified. My mother's expression registered pained recognition while my father maintained defensive posture. We made the best decision for the family as a whole, he stated firmly. Tyler's educational needs represented immediate critical priority that— It's okay, Dad, I interrupted gently. The decision was justifiable based on information available to you at that time. You correctly assessed that I had capacity to manage alternative educational funding independently. You simply underestimated the extent of that independent capability. My framing offered reconciliatory interpretation without surrendering the essential truth of their underestimation. My mother reached across the table, tentatively touching my hand with evident emotional confusion. I still don't understand why you didn't just tell us about the company when we discussed the college fund, she said softly. You let us believe you would need student loans, that this would create financial hardship for you, when apparently you had resources we knew nothing about. Her question identified the complexity at the core of our family's communication patterns. My deliberate withholding of significant information had created unnecessary emotional distress based on inaccurate assumptions. Yet, revealing my business, success would have fundamentally altered the dynamic of their decision-making in ways that might have obscured important truths about our relationship. Your decision regarding the college fund provided valuable clarity about how you fundamentally perceive me and my capabilities, I explained carefully. That unfiltered assessment offered important insights that might have remained obscured if financial considerations had been complicated by knowledge of Minder Market's existence. So you basically let them feel guilty about something that wasn't actually going to hurt you financially because you wanted to see what they would do when they thought you had no other options. Tyler summarized with characteristic bluntness. His framing made my strategic information management sound manipulative rather than analytically purposeful. I considered this perspective thoughtfully, recognizing legitimate ethical complexity in my approach. The decision to maintain operational privacy extended beyond immediate financial considerations, I clarified. Complete disclosure would have initiated significant family dynamic reconfiguration that might have disrupted critical business development phase. The timing of revelation was always intended to align with appropriate business milestone achievement, rather than personal circumstance optimization. But that milestone conveniently arrived immediately after we reallocated your college fund, my father noted with renewed skepticism. The timing seems suspiciously responsive rather than independently determined. His observation correctly identified the accelerative impact of their decision on my disclosure timeline. The college fund reallocation had indeed catalyzed implementation of independence plans that might otherwise have developed more gradually. The venture capital agreement was under negotiation before your decision regarding educational funding, I clarified. However, that decision did accelerate implementation of independence plans that would have eventually emerged through natural business development progression. My mother sighed, emotional exhaustion evident in her expression. All this time, we thought we understood who you were, what you needed, how you were developing, but you were becoming someone entirely different right in front of us, and we never even noticed. Her observation contained painful truth for both perspectives. My parents had indeed failed to recognize the person I was actually becoming, while I had deliberately maintained separation between my authentic development and their perception of it. This mutual participation in misaligned understanding complicated simplistic assignment of responsibility. Not entirely different, I corrected gently. The core characteristics you recognized, analytical thinking, methodical problem-solving, committed follow-through, were accurate assessments. Those qualities simply manifested in domains beyond your awareness through application pathways you didn't anticipate. Tyler, who had been quietly observing our exchange with his characteristic perceptiveness, suddenly laughed with genuine amusement. So basically, Mom and Dad raised exactly the super-capable, independent daughter they thought they were raising. They just didn't realize exactly how capable and independent you'd actually become. His summary captured essential irony with remarkable precision. My parents had indeed cultivated the very qualities that enabled me to develop capabilities beyond their awareness or control. Their success as parents had produced outcomes that exceeded their anticipated parameters. That's an accurate assessment, I acknowledged, offering him a genuine smile of appreciation for his perceptive synthesis. My mother looked between us with dawning recognition. I suppose when we've always told you that you could accomplish anything you set your mind to, we should have been prepared for you to take that literally. Her observation contained first hint of potential reconciliation, acknowledgement that my achievements, while unexpected, represented natural extension of qualities they had deliberately cultivated rather than rebellion against their guidance. Your consistent reinforcement of my capability and independence significantly contributed to Minder Market's development, I confirmed, offering this acknowledgement as relational bridge rather than strategic concession. The confidence to pursue unconventional implementation methodologies derives partly from foundational belief in problem-solving capacity that your parenting established. This recognition visibly affected both parents, my mother's expression softening with emotional response while my father's rigid defensive posture marginally relaxed. Tyler observed these subtle shifts with evident satisfaction, his role as family emotional barometer allowing him to register incremental movement toward potential reconciliation. I still want to see this company headquarters tomorrow, my father stated, though his tone carried less challenging skepticism than earlier. If you've truly built something substantial, I need to understand its operational structure and market positioning. The tour is scheduled for 3 o'clock, I confirmed. You'll find the development team highly qualified and the implementation methodology rigorously structured. And then what? My mother asked, the practical question containing deeper inquiry about our reconfigured family relationship. You live in your apartment, run your company, and what? Visit occasionally for Sunday dinner like a distant relative? Her question revealed core emotional concern beneath practical considerations. Fear that my independence would sever meaningful family connection rather than simply transform its parameters. Despite demonstrated underestimation of my capabilities, her genuine desire for continued relationship deserved thoughtful response. I anticipate regular family engagement appropriate to adult relationship parameters, I replied, deliberately choosing warmer phrasing than my typical formal construction. Sunday dinners represent reasonable connectivity mechanism, though scheduling flexibility will be necessary given business implementation timeline requirements. Tyler rolled his eyes at my formal articulation of family dinner plans. She means, she'll still come see us regularly, Mom. But she needs everyone to respect that she has a literal company to run and can't just show up whenever you want her to. His translation accurately captured my intended meaning while demonstrating his characteristic ability to bridge communication styles between family members. My mother nodded slowly, processing this reconfigured relationship with visible effort toward acceptance. And Westfield? My father inquired, returning to educational considerations that had previously defined our understanding of my future. You mentioned deferment rather than cancellation. Do you still intend to pursue traditional education despite this business development? His phrasing revealed continued difficulty fully acknowledging Mindermarket as legitimate professional achievement rather than temporary diversion from expected educational progression. This perspective allowed him to maintain hope that conventional pathways would eventually reassert priority over entrepreneurial deviation. Educational objectives remain integrated within long-term strategic planning, I confirmed. Westfield's deferment allows focused attention on critical business implementation phase while preserving future academic engagement options. The specific timeline will depend on operational milestone achievement and leadership structure development. My deliberately diplomatic response maintained decision-making autonomy while acknowledging continued value in traditional education. This balanced position offered reconnection possibility without surrendering independent determination of priority sequencing. As dinner concluded and dessert was served, conversation gradually shifted toward Tyler's upcoming educational program, safer territory where established family dynamics could temporarily reassert without confronting still processing revelations. My brother occasionally glanced at me with expressions suggesting continued fascination with the transformed understanding of his seemingly conventional high-achieving sister. When preparing to depart, I confirmed tomorrow's company tour timing with my parents and exchanged standard familial farewells. The interaction maintained surface normalcy while accommodating fundamental reconfiguration occurring beneath conversational exchange. Tyler accompanied me to the door while our parents remained in the dining room, their subdued conversation suggesting continued processing of the evening's revelations. That was intense, he observed quietly. But kind of amazing, too. My sister, the secret tech CEO, definitely didn't see that plot twist coming. His genuine appreciation without jealousy or resentment demonstrated his characteristic emotional generosity. Despite his own learning challenges, he had always celebrated my achievements without comparative diminishment of his own worth. Your program at Grayson Academy represents equally significant opportunity, I reminded him sincerely. Educational alignment with processing needs will substantially enhance your considerable intellectual capabilities. He smiled with characteristic self-awareness. Always the diplomat, Em, but seriously, I'm really proud of what you've built. And I get why you kept it private. Must have been exhausting always hiding such a huge part of your life. His perceptive recognition of the emotional toll extracted by my compartmentalization touched unexpectedly vulnerable territory. The calculated separation between personal and professional domains had indeed required significant psychological energy management, rarely acknowledged even to myself. Maintaining appropriate operational boundaries required structured cognitive discipline, I acknowledged, the formal phrasing providing emotional distance from difficult recognition. Integrated identity expression offers considerable efficiency advantages. In human terms, it feels better not having to pretend to be less awesome than you actually are, he translated with affectionate exasperation. You know, you can occasionally just say things directly without sounding like a business textbook. Had a baby with a psychology journal. His teasing observation highlighted how professional communication patterns had gradually infiltrated my personal expression, a natural consequence of spending formative developmental years building and managing a company while navigating adolescent identity formation. The integration of CEO and sister identities would require conscious attention to appropriate contextual communication modulation. Linguistic pattern optimization remains ongoing, I acknowledged with deliberate smile, accepting his observation, without defensiveness. Contextual communication calibration benefits from external feedback mechanisms. He laughed, recognizing my intentional exaggeration of formal phrasing as acceptance of his gentle critique. You're ridiculous, but also kind of incredible. Don't be a stranger, okay? This house feels weird without you in it, even if you were secretly running an empire from your bedroom. His simple expression of genuine connection momentarily penetrated my carefully maintained composure. Despite the complexity of family revelation and relationship reconfiguration, Tyler's straightforward affection remained uncomplicated by adult expectations or authority positioning. Sibling relationship parameters remain priority allocation. Within scheduling constraints, I assured him, then deliberately shifted to more natural expression. I promise I'll stay connected, Ty. Different doesn't have to mean distant. As I departed my childhood home, now transformed from residence to relational location, I recognized the evening had established foundational parameters for reconfigured family engagement moving forward. My parents would require continued processing, time to fully assimilate transformed understanding of their daughter's capabilities and independence. Tyler's emotional intelligence would likely facilitate eventual family recalibration through his characteristic perceptive bridge building. The venture capital implementation timeline would proceed regardless of family adjustment progress. Business development necessitated focused leadership attention, independent of personal relationship complexity. Yet the initial confrontation had established potential for eventual integration rather than permanent separation between professional achievement and family connection. My apartment welcomed me with quiet efficiency, space configured for optimal functionality rather than decorative comfort. The contrast between family home's emotional complexity and independent residence's streamlined purposefulness reflected the parallel aspects of identity I was now integrating more completely. The achievement-oriented daughter engaged in complex family dynamics and the focused CEO implementing ambitious business expansion. Tomorrow's company tour would provide my parents' first direct exposure to the professional world I had built beyond their awareness. Their reaction would significantly influence subsequent relationship parameters. Acceptance of demonstrated capability might facilitate transformed connection, while continued resistance would necessitate more limited engagement to preserve operational autonomy. The challenge ahead involved neither complete separation from family influence nor return to dependent positioning, but rather establishment of appropriate boundaries that honored both my demonstrated independence and genuine family connection. The path would require navigation of complex emotional territory resistant to systematic management. Yet the potential outcome, relationship based on authentic recognition rather than projected expectation, represented development opportunity, transcending mere professional achievement. As I prepared materials for tomorrow's morning executive meetings, I recognized with unexpected clarity that Minder Market's remarkable business success might ultimately prove less challenging than the personal growth required to integrate previously compartmentalized aspects of identity into coherent whole. Professional achievement had emerged through methodical application of analytical capability. Personal integration would demand emotional intelligence less systematically developed through my independence-focused adolescence. Yet, perhaps this integration challenge represented the most significant growth opportunity of all, developing capacity to maintain authentic connection while preserving necessary boundaries, communicating genuine needs without surrendering strategic autonomy, allowing others to witness capability without demanding their validation of its worth. The venture capital had transformed Minder Market's operational capacity overnight. The revelation to my family had similarly catalyzed immediate reconfiguration of relationship dynamics. Both transformations would require skillful navigation of accelerated implementation timelines. Both would ultimately prove worthwhile investments in long-term development of company, of self, of capacity to create meaningful impact through authentic engagement with world as truly was, rather than as others perceived it to be. The morning executive meeting proceeded with methodical efficiency, each department head reporting implementation progress against accelerated timeline benchmarks. Marcus presented the enhanced database architecture modifications necessary for multi-district scaling. Sophia, our newly appointed UX director recruited from a major educational technology competitor, outlined interface standardization protocols to ensure consistent user experience across expanded implementation locations. Jordan, head of district relations, detailed contract negotiation progress with 8 Pacific Northwest school administrators. Seattle and Portland are ready for immediate implementation pending technical readiness, Jordan reported, referencing the structured milestone chart displayed on the conference room screen. Tacoma and Bellevue are finalizing budget approval processes. The remaining districts require additional demonstration of scalability metrics, but express strong interest contingent on initial implementation success. Excellent progress, I acknowledged, making notation in my strategic implementation document. Engineering confirms core architecture modifications will be completed within 17 days, allowing initial onboarding for Seattle by month-end. This phased approach provides progressive validation for remaining districts while maintaining manageable integration sequencing. The meeting concluded with clear action items assigned across departments, accountability metrics established, and next integration checkpoints scheduled. As the team dispersed, I remained briefly in the conference room, reviewing preparation for my parents' tour scheduled for 3 o'clock. The presentation materials had been carefully calibrated, comprehensive enough to demonstrate operational legitimacy while protecting proprietary methodologies from potential competitive exposure. This balance reflected practical business considerations rather than continuing trust issues with my parents. The non-disclosure agreements they would sign offered legal protection, but prudent information management represented standard operational practice regardless of visitors' familial connection. Following additional developer interviews and a product strategy session with Marcus and Sophia, I arrived at our temporary reception area precisely at 2:55 p.m. to find my parents already waiting, 5 minutes early as was my father's habitual practice for business appointments. Their attire reflected the significance with which they approached this visit. My father in his standard corporate meeting suit, my mother in the professional dress she reserved for important school district functions in her role as educational administrator. Welcome to Minder Market headquarters. I greeted them with professional courtesy, appropriate to the business context. Thank you for your punctuality. We'll begin with standard visitor protocols before proceeding to the operations tour. My father's eyebrows raised slightly at my formal tone, though it simply reflected appropriate context differentiation between family dinner conversation and professional business interaction. The receptionist provided standard non-disclosure agreements, which my father examined with careful attention before signing, his corporate training automatically engaging to evaluate contractual language. These are fairly comprehensive confidentiality, Provisions, he noted, initialing each page with practiced efficiency. Particularly the section regarding proprietary algorithmic methodologies. Educational matching efficacy represents our core competitive advantage, I explained. The algorithms differentiating learning style compatibility from mere subject matter credentialing constitutes significant intellectual property requiring appropriate protection. My mother signed her agreement with less analytical scrutiny, her expression suggesting continuing adjustment to this transformed context for parent-child interaction. The formal business environment highlighted the disconnect between her perception of her academically successful daughter and the professional CEO reality now unavoidably evident. After completing documentation requirements, I provided visitor badges and guided them through secure doors into the development area, where engineering teams worked in collaborative groupings around specialized workstations. The space hummed with focused activity, developers writing code, design specialists refining interface elements, quality assurance engineers testing implementation protocols. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.